Welcome to episode 3, season 2 of the TNA podcast, Totally Not Appropriate. It's me. I'm on a time frame this morning, and Adrian and I are like, we're going to do this. We don't have the same runway we usually have. So let's see how cohesive our podcast can be in 45 minutes. It'll be a good practice run for us. You're listening to the TNA podcast.
Totally Not Appropriate.
We're your hosts, Taylor Sappington, a cosmic cartographer, medical astrologer, and herbalist decoding the intersection of soul, body, and belief.
And Adrian Irizarry, a psychoalchemist trained in East Asian medicine, vibrational healing, and the sacred science of your nervous system.
Together, we blend ancient tools, clinical wisdom, and unapologetic truth-telling.
From main events to metaphysics, tarot to tonics, karma to cancel culture, nothing is off limits and everything is on the table.
This space is for the boldly curious,
the ones who crave uncomfortable conversations, crave deeper insight, and are done pretending that they don't feel what they feel.
So turn it up,
tune in,
and don't say we didn't warn you.
Welcome to TNA.
So Adrian, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about this misconception that working in the ancient and natural arts is less valuable in terms of monetary compensation than going to somebody who has MD after their name.
This hits so deeply for me, and I know it does for you because we've had so many conversations around this topic. And I had a pretty rude conversation with somebody I really admire yesterday, and it was a conversation that needed to happen for me personally, and I'm sure their frustration with me and witnessing what I do around pricing. But the long and short of that conversation was I was told that my pricing is embarrassing.
Yeah, I've had people tell me the same thing, actually.
You know, we live in a world where if you don't go to medical school, if you don't have an MD, a PA, an NP, a DO after your name, somehow we assume you don't have the same amount of training and experience. And I can say for the both of us, that's just not the case. If anything, we have equal and in some cases more training and experience than some of the aforementioned subspecialties, if you will. So I really do believe that this is a cultural wound. And I think it's important. Once upon a time, let's start the story, right? Like once upon a time, the village healer was the cornerstone of the community. So the herbalist, the midwife, the astrologer, just gonna put that out there, the bone setter. If you've never, Adrian had a bone setting ceremony after her last pregnancy, right? These were respected roles. They weren't fringe positions. And somehow today they're considered to be fringe positions. They weren't hobbies. They were essential to community health. And those holding these medicinal practices, the medicine close to their heart, passing the information along, they were compensated well. Okay. They were compensated not just with coins, but with land, with food, with protection, and with influence. Their value was never in question.
I mean, just think about like in mythology, the seer. Okay. Yeah. In like Shakespearean plays, you see the role of the oracle or the seer as like a really valued, revered, and kind of scary position because you knew things that others didn't know and you held wisdom that other people needed, wanted, et cetera, et cetera. And that was a very revered position to be in. And if you missed our episode early on in Holy Shift, where we talked about the burning times, this is actually culturally where a lot of this started to shift. So if you did not listen to that episode, go back and check it out. It was like the second or third episode we ever did, because it really was foundational to a lot of the garbage that we deal with today, because that is one of the moments in history that you can point to where culture shifted. And then we had another big cultural shift that happened around 1910, thanks to the Rockefellers.
Oh, we're going to talk about them. Okay.
Oh, hell yes, we're talking about
they
them.
Are in my notes. This is the systemic erasure. So this particular date that Adrienne is talking about, around the late 1800s, the early 1900s, 1910, to quote Adrienne, the Rockefeller family, John D. Rockefeller, began reshaping the landscape of health and medicine. Mm-hmm. He built his empire on oil. Mm-hmm. Okay. So John D. Rockefeller built his entire empire on oil. And then he began funding the creation of what we know as today as Western medicine. Mm-hmm. And he and other industrialists, please keep that word in mind, industrial, because when you think about it, it's the medical industry. Mm-hmm. So he and other industrialists pushed to standardize medicine through the Flexner Report of 1910. If you've never read the Flexner Report, press pause on this episode, go Google the Flexner Report and have yourself a meltdown.
Yep.
It's disturbing to read the Flexner Report, frankly. That ultimately, the Flexner Report, John D. Rockefeller, the funding of Western medicine as we know it, that led to the closure of homeopathic, herbalist, midwifery. We still see the bullshit with midwives today and like how many hoops they have to jump through in order to tend to a birth. Midwifery and indigenous medicine schools in the United States. 1910. Guys, it's 2026. Mm-hmm. Do the math.
So I just want to like insert a little side note here, because there's probably some people listening to this going, what the hell does a guy who made his money in oil have anything to do with modern medicine?
Please say it. I cannot believe we decided to record this podcast episode in 45 minutes. Okay, please say it.
But I think this is going to keep us on target, because this is where we see the introduction of big pharma.
And petroleum. How many of your medications have petroleum
in them? Yes. So he had a vested interest in pharmaceutical-based education. Mm-hmm. He made money when petrochemical derivative things were created from byproducts of what he had a vested interest in. Yes. And so this right here is the beginning of why we are now, the end, dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
This is where we now have issues with polypharmacy and all of these things, because our modern medical schools teach a pharmaceutical-based curriculum. Mm-hmm. If you ask any doctor, they get very little education about diet. So like you go to your doctor and you're like, okay, so I have extra body fat. What do I do about it? Let me refer you to a registered dietitian, because literally they weren't taught about it.
Mm-hmm. As a former of the latter, let me tell you something. The education in the dietetic world is pretty abysmal too.
So like there's a lot of things that go into that.
Pepsi, let me just name some of the sponsors of the American Dietetic Association's curriculum. Big Food.
Well, and there's Big Food that sponsors like formula and things of that nature. That's a whole history that we should go down.
Come back to that
later, because there's a sketchy history around formula too. So looking at this big pivotal moment in 1910, the Rockefellers started taking a lot of their wealth and throwing it behind Western medical schools that taught this pharmaceutical-based education. Mm-hmm. And so ancient medicine, socialized cultural medicine, as we understood it, when you went to the town apothecary, started to disappear.
Yeah.
So like, there's nothing that makes me crazier than when I am like scrolling through Facebook and I'm in a bunch of different groups, and like some of these mother groups are like, tell me where I can find a holistic OBGYN. And I have now started becoming that jerk that chimes in and goes, well, number one, that is a unicorn that you're looking for that doesn't really exist. I mean, I can name two.
Moron. Think about what you're asking for.
Correct. Like I can name a couple, but in general, holistic and OBGYN do not go together in the same sentence because they still do not look at the whole person. Mm-hmm. And unless they have training outside of it, like sound healing, like this is the OB that I'm thinking of, like she has sound healing education. She thinks outside in the energetic box, but she does get a lot of social scrutiny from people in her circle because she does that, right? But she gets it. In general, holistic and OBGYN don't coexist in the same container. And people, they want like diagnostic tests, but they want it to be holistic. And it's like, hold on, what are you asking for?
Yeah.
Because if you're asking for testing, you're asking for the Western model. If you're asking for holistic
pattern recognition,
correct, you are looking for somebody who is trained in the herbal arts.
Also, guys, physicians outside of the United States are not trained the same way physicians in the United States are.
That is very true.
Many physicians outside of the United States, I'm going to take India, for example, because I worked with a lot of Indian-based doctors, and they were so brilliant. When they came from India and their training, their original medical training was in India. I learned so much from them. But these were the doctors that could literally palpate, observe, check the color of the eye, the tongue, do a pulse in a different way than we take pulse in the Western medical world, and come to a potential diagnosis that was then validated by the technology in the Western world. So they don't rely on technology. They have learned how to weave these ancient practices into a modern medical model. And that's really the best of both worlds.
Yes, absolutely. Because there's a time and place for both toolkits.
Absolutely.
The part that gets me on the soapbox, however, is that there is this massive siloing and this ostracization. Holy cow, that word won't come out of my mouth this morning, of people who have been trained in herbal and ancient arts and can read the body. Yep. Like I will sit down with people, campfire, for example, somebody inevitably around that campfire is going to be bitching about their health in some respect, right? My hip hurts. This isn't working right. I've been having a hard time with my heart lately, whatever. Okay. So then enter Adrian. They think it's frigging magic. Because I asked them like 3 questions and I'm like, well, so then does this happen? Does this happen? Does this happen? They're like, how did you know that?
It's pattern recognition.
Exactly. It's pattern recognition, but man, it is the coolest party trick. Everybody thinks it's freaking
It really
magic.
is. Well, that's like astrology. What are the most pressing questions people ask? What should I eat? When should I eat? What should my day-to-day look like? What jacks my nervous system and how to regulate it? All I have to do is spend 10 minutes in your chart. I can tell you what to eat, when to eat, where to eat it, what jacks your nervous system, what your day-to-day looks like, how your body best detoxes, what fertility potentially looks like. Let me just take like a very, please don't universally apply this, right? I have Saturn in my 5th house. Generally speaking, Saturn in the 5th house as a natal placement is not an ideal placement for children and becoming a mother. There is going to be likely, all in individual context, right? There's likely going to be challenges that you're going to face in the process of conception, carrying, and delivery. And while the circumstances of my child were very unexpected, the majority of women that I support when I'm able to look at their chart who have experienced a miscarriage, guess what they have in their chart? Saturn in the 5th house. Right? Adrian and I just had this conversation about perimenopause and like what different transits and or placements, it was our last episode, could potentially give insight into hormonal transitions.
It was in our last episode, but then Adrian sidebarred Taylor afterwards and she goes, so I'm in it, aren't I?
And her solar return really confirms it, but it gives her some flexibility too. So I can say yes and.
Yeah, because like I'm seeing the changes, but that's the thing. Like I know to look for them and I know what I'm looking for. Yeah. And that is part of what we lost when this historical shift took place, because not only was it about profit and monetization, but it also was about control. And then who controlled the narrative? And then women were not allowed into these new medical schools that had a lot of Rockefeller funding that were backing them. And like I said, I'm not diminishing the fact that there has been a lot of insight that has come out of Western study. However, if you look at it, it validates. Well, but all it does is it goes back and it validates the shit that ancient practices knew. Mm-hmm. So it is another data point to confirm that these ancient traditions really knew their shit. Mm-hmm. And like nobody validated that.
All they did was they literally studied bodies in real settings, right? I get the idea of a randomized controlled clinical trial. I get the sterilization of it. Mm-hmm. Okay. But life is not sterile.
No. And if you don't incorporate diversity, if you don't incorporate different age brackets, like it's a long list of things that get left out. Follow up.
Okay, we're not going to go down this rabbit hole. I'm not going to step on this soapbox. I'm just going to make this comment and be done with it. It is not, in my humble opinion, it is not a genuine study of something when you're comparing it against another pharmaceutical. So let's just take vaccines, for example. I'm going to hit that hot button, right? The majority of vaccines are compared against other pharmaceuticals, and often they're compared against different vaccines. You are not getting a genuine reflection of the efficacy and the impact of that vaccine when you're looking at it against a placebo group that has also been exposed to a pharmaceutical agent. What you really need is a saline placebo. Mm-hmm. And when we don't set up trials to give us genuine results, what is the data we're actually founded on? Mm-hmm. Fallacy.
I mean, I say it a lot. It's your research is only good as the questions being asked and whose lens are you looking at it through?
And what is the final question that they want to fulfill? Can I create a case to put this to market? Mm-hmm. And every drug needs to be a blockbuster, guys. Like, worked in the medical field long enough to tell you that every new drug, every pharmaceutical company is trying to make that drug a blockbuster. Mm-hmm. Their next $1 billion sellout. Yep. So if your goal is cash oriented, patient focus goes right out the window.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So back to Adrian's point, if you control the oil, did I say oil? The oil that makes pharmaceuticals oil, and the institutions that teach people what medicine, quote unquote, is, to Adrian's point, you profit at every level. Mm-hmm.
And on the flip side of that, so then who loses?
Well, they painted traditional medicine as unscientific. They painted it as superstitious. Are you kidding me? If you think that all we are is a body and a mind and blood, okay, and I'll take it a step further, in a spirit, but even that's a little woo for a lot of people.
Yep.
Seriously?
Taylor, people think that I walk out of the woods with sticks and I just wave sticks around and this is how I do my work. I'm not even exaggerating. When I talk to people about what it is that I do, it's just so abstract for them. But that's why I quoted the 1910 number, because we are sitting in 2026.
Living in 1910.
We are, in some ways, we are still living in 1910 in a lot of ways. Yeah. But there is a point in time you can point to on a chronological timeline that this is fundamentally where the herbs got a bad name. So now fast forward to 2026. I've been in this arena. Somebody asked me that yesterday, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm coming up on 14 years of being with herbal stuff in my life. And my practice itself is 8 years old. I played a lot. I just helped people because it brought my heart joy. That I decided I was going to make it into a formal big girl job 8 years ago. But I was essentially the community herbalist is really what it was. People came to me.
That's a role that you can go be educated upon. Community herbalist is a branch of herbalism. Then there's clinical. We've talked about all of this, but what you're speaking to is literally an oral tradition passed down.
Yes. And I've had the opportunity, I've been so fortunate to learn with some of the absolute best in the industry. And I have so much gratitude for all of their wisdom and knowledge and everything that I've learned. And I have a decade of education beyond my master's degree, people. 10 years of education beyond my master's degree. Okay. 4 years undergrad, 2 years master's, 10 years beyond that. And all of that doesn't, in a lot of people's minds, amount to anything. It makes me crazy. I mean, even just look at chiropractors, for example. They have as much training as a doctor.
Yep.
And there are a lot of people that discredit them as a doctor.
DOs used to, and many still do in certain parts of the country, adjust.
Yes.
Right? Like that was part of their curriculum. Chiropractor became a thing when MD took the primary place in medical training. Thank God for chiropractors. Are you kidding me? Like,
oh yeah, I love mine.
Yeah. Like, I don't know if yours is the same way. I like mine because she's like, I'll see you in a month or 5 weeks. She's not like, I need to see you 3 times a week every week. She's like, I'll see you in a month or 5 weeks. And by that 5th week, I'm like, I really need to be it's time.
Yeah, I've been going to mine more often because I was trying to get pregnant and now I'm like recovering from getting pregnant. But she's the same philosophy. Like, I'm here if you need me. She has gotten my body in incredible working order. There's so many different ways that chiropractors can do their work, from NSA to BGI and manual. There's so many nuances to their art.
Yep.
Okay. And they are required to take so much continuing education. And honestly, there's a lot of us, Taylor and I, that have continuing ed, like that also are required of us too.
Continuing education. I have to have insurance. I have to have liability insurance.
Yep. Me too.
Okay. Like I have to keep soap notes and documents in a HIPAA certified platform. That's encrypted. I don't think most people understand. Like, I have to do JCO education every year to show that I understand HIPAA compliance. So this isn't just a hobby.
And that's the thing. Like, so when I go into these forums and I see people going, I'm looking for a holistic or I'm looking for an NP. So I'll introduce into the conversation, like, are you looking for somebody holistic? Or are you looking for somebody that's going to do testing? Because always those two things are in the description. And really what I think that it boils down to is we've been so saturated in I can only understand that something's happening in the body through diagnostic testing. That's what they think they need in order to know. And again, I'm not discrediting. Sometimes that diagnostic tool is helpful. I just had this conversation with my daughter's father. My daughter is tired and she's having a hard time getting up in the morning. And I'm like, I guarantee you she's iron deficient and D deficient. And she just needs a little bit more sunlight and some vitamin D because we live in New England.
Sun Hug. I'm going to plug them again. No affiliation. Sun Hug.
Yeah.
It's like the little tent that you pop up outside and you get your vitamin D because it feels like a tropical paradise while it's snowing all around you. But
I really need to look into one of those because that would make me so happy.
Brilliant technology.
Absolutely. But I just know based on her presentation, the shadows under her eyes, that is why she's having a hard time getting up. It isn't that she's being a lazy teen. She legitimately is having a hard time. He's like, but should we send her for testing? And that's like, oh God. So yes.
If you want to open that can of worms,
I mean, she can be tested, but I can tell you what it is that's happening because I do the work and I know.
You just know based on the pattern.
But that's the thing.
Yes, it's real.
There's so much time spent in identifying the diagnostic patterns. When I teach practitioners, I teach them pattern recognition because I want them to be able to look at a body, whether it's in person or through a telehealth environment, and be able to say, oh, I can see just from your face X, Y, and Z. Let me ask questions about the rest of these things,
or
right?
The shape of your tongue or the width of your tongue or the coating on your tongue or your respiration rate. People don't realize it. I'm like totally checking out their clavicle while we're sitting there. You know what I mean? Like all these subtle things, or the color of their eyes, or whether or not they're shifty, or where they're looking in the room. You know what I mean? Are you actually here? Or are you just repeating what's here, but you've completely dissociated? And because of the narrative that the Rockefellers created alongside the Flexner report, right? The things that we do are now considered to be non-medical, but what has come in their place is coats, pills, and machines.
And if you decide that you want to move out of that model,
but I not it's painful, just FYI.
I mean, it's a total mindset shift. when you say you want something natural, you like legitimately need to be open-minded to looking at your body and life completely differently.
Do you know what's wild though? I have worked with so many physician spouses. I have worked with mid-levels and nurses at this point. The doctors rarely find their way to me. And I don't know if there's like a cognitive dissonance because they're like, oh, this chick doesn't have an MD behind her name. I'm like, but you feel comfortable enough sending your wife and children to me. Can we just reflect that right here? So that's the seed Adrienne and I are talking about of why you've been conditioned to feel guilty for anybody in the space for charging for your work. And man, it's coming up in a big way in my life right now. Like when someone who loves you enough to tell you that your prices are embarrassing, you should probably pay attention, you know, or when you sit down and you're like, I literally have 14 years of education and work and I've helped thousands of people. My time in all of those clinical settings, observing, participating counts. As clinical experience, like counts. 100%. I have seen everything from life to birth, from death to birth. Like I've seen it all and everything in between. Right. And then you like your own practice and all of the people that I have been privileged and you've been privileged enough to support. Like it's all clinical experience. And the cool thing is a lot of times it's both lenses. I can tell you what they're going to do there. And then I can also tell you what we can do here. And then you can decide. So yes, the Rockefellers didn't just dismantle an industrialist. Maybe we don't classify it to just one family, although they were the pioneers. Go Rockefellers. FYI, if I love my life, you know, like I am not suicidal. Okay. They didn't just dismantle a system. They dismantled the perception of worth around intuitive, energetic, ancestral healing and how, you know, like now I should say generations later, we're dealing with the programming. Like many of us are carrying it in our bones. Get the words out, Taylor.
Yeah. Because I mean, she's having a hard time getting it out because it's something that's literally felt at the fabric of the body level, like wanting to be compensated for that expertise.
Being told that you're being gouging. Like, I'm sorry. It would take you 10 years, if not longer, to understand what Adrienne and I bring to the table.
Oh, yeah. Or more than that. And the thing that really like turns the knife for me is I do this as a calling. I do this from my heart space. I do this because I genuinely want to help people. And I really think that people that went into Western medicine wanted to help and have been
there. Do you also think we're getting people who have been severely traumatized and that need to be needed is not rooted in a healthy place? That was me. I mean, I can admit that. You want to find some of the most traumatized people, go to medical school.
Yeah, that's true.
And I don't say that disrespectfully. I stand in solidarity, right? Like it's a place where you're always needed, but you're not necessarily needed in the best way.
Yeah. Well, and I think even like at the very beginning of my work, if I'm really truthful, I could see a little bit of myself in that because I was frustrated. So I've had a lifelong frustration with not being heard. And so like
your solar return is totally lighten that up. Sorry, I digress. 2026 is going to give you plenty of practice.
Yes. And I already can feel that, honestly. But I wanted to be the resource that I couldn't find. And I wanted people to feel seen and heard in a way that I hadn't been. And that is part of the fabric of my practice. But the part that really turns the knife for me is when people have been on this long and windy road. They've been to upteen trillion doctors. They've had all of the tests. They've had all the things. And they say, I just like can't find the answer to what it is that is ailing me. And I can tell them in like less than 30 minutes. And then they're like, but I've spent thousands of dollars. Like, I can't afford your services. And I know I undercharge. So like, I know that I could charge more. And I try to meet people where they're at because I understand that money doesn't grow on trees. But then when I do that, I get nickel and dimed and I get really used. And that doesn't feel good. So it's like, I do this from my heart and I do this as a calling, but I also have to be able to heat my house and feed my family.
And most of the time what we charge hasn't even kept up with inflation.
Oh my gosh, yes. So let's talk numbers really quickly. I was talking to my dad yesterday, and he read this newspaper article about a candidate who is running for a governmental situation in the state of Maine. And he was talking about, or in this article, the gentleman was talking about the cost of IVF in the United States and the fact that they're flying to another country to do IVF because he is self-employed. His insurance absolutely doesn't cover it. His diagnostics are fine, but they need intervention, right? So they're literally flying to another country.
Many people do this.
They do. Flight, lodging, and the services are less than they are for one round of IVF here in the United States. $5,500 for all of the things I just listed going to this other country. Here in the United States, if they were to drive 4 hours to Boston and do it in Boston, it would be $25,000 for one round.
I also want to make sure that we illuminate this though, right? Because I lived in Canada. My husband is Canadian. I can speak to this from like a personal perspective. Like, let's just take Canada. I'll keep it at that one, right? Public service healthcare. That's what they are offered. Most of the time, unless the people in, let's just say, Canada have the financial means to come to the United States. So we see it in reverse in some of these countries for things like IVF or surgery or another type of intervention. They're not getting it, or they're waiting a long time.
Living in a state that's like completely surrounded by Canada, we had a law. So I worked in an MRI file room when I was in my undergrad as a summer job. We had so many Canadians that would come for,
because it's quicker.
It was so much faster. And because of the symptoms that they were experiencing, like I've had Canadian clients in my practice. Like, so yes, I absolutely hear all of that.
I've been to Mexico for services that would have cost me triple. What it costs here. So yes.
So take all of that. Okay. $25,000 for one round of IVF. My services aren't even a tenth of that. And I get told often that I'm too expensive, but people will literally take out a second mortgage on their house for something that has an 80% failure rate.
I mean, respectfully, I'm done with those people. And I'm done with those people because none of those people would go into work and give 8 hours of their time every single day. Or maybe they would, in which case this is an opportunity for self-reflection for all of us, right? But they wouldn't go into work for 8 hours a day and be asked to do 10 other roles. I'd be like, sure, keep it at the same rate. Do we need to reverse back to what we said earlier in the conversation? CEUs, liability insurance, HIPAA compliance. If we weren't considered some form of medical guys, those wouldn't be required. Cognitive dissonance. So we're going to tell a story, but then we're going to require this of those practitioners. Sometimes we need to lift the veil and be like, oh, come on in. Look at all of this. If I wasn't required to carry these, I might understand the story and why everybody has this preconceived notion in their head. But guess what? All required.
Right. And I'm also going to put out the caveat that I've seen people with no pelvic steaming training opening up a shop and like they really don't know what they're doing. And so, yes, okay, because it is an unregulated industry in the majority of places. Some states have more requirements, because I'm speaking to the United States. Some states have more requirements around herbal practice. Sometimes there is legislation around Chinese herbal practice versus, Western herbal practice. And one is regulated and the other isn't. So because there are state by state guidelines and there's just different considerations in different places, like you do have to do your research to make sure that who you're working with knows what they're doing. And if they have a weekend certificate that they can do something with herbs, you're going to want to look for somebody who is a seasoned vet at this type of stuff. Because the people who are really good at their craft, they have done the work, they have done the research, they have lived it, they have, hundreds of people through their practice. Like it's very different. And so I would encourage you to definitely do research on who it is that you're working with. If you are talking to a practitioner that pushes a lot of supplements, ask questions. because nutraceuticals is as much of an industry as pharmaceuticals are at this point.
And they are synthetic derivatives of the plants that we're talking about. You're isolating a single component and calling it effective. Plants work in synergy.
Turmeric and curcumin. I had to say it.
If you're doing it without black pepper fruit.
Yep. It's not doing anything.
I'm getting ready to make a maceration. It's going to be turmeric, ginger. I'm going to do a glycerite because they're both like ginger's spicy. Like fresh ginger is spicy. And then I'm going to add an element of black pepper. I can't wait. But I'm like, you cannot do this without black pepper fruit. Like, especially when you're adding the turmeric component, you know, but like, absolutely. Like when you look at the isolated derivatives, what's it doing? What change are you actually making? And how is that change sticking?
Yes.
If you stop the supplement and it doesn't stick, you've changed nothing. You know, so what you're saying, Adrienne, is when someone comes to you and they're like, you should do this because it's for the community, or is it healing a gift from spirit? That's my favorite one, right? Okay, the same spirit you tell me is demonic. This country, man, what they're really saying is, I've internalized a system that erased your power. And I expect you to keep playing small. So the people that challenge pricing, I'm saying this to pump myself up too, right? Like, just know I'm pumping myself up as I record this podcast. The people that are going to call me too expensive are probably not my people.
Yeah. And it's hard, right? It's hard to demonstrate your value in one conversation, especially with somebody who has been, and if you grew up in the West, you know, you've been saturated and marinated in this understanding for a long time.
But if you could sit down on a conversation with an Adrienne and I, and you can get an answer that you've been searching a decade for, and then save yourself another decade, how much more valuable do I need to become in order to be paid? At that point, it's your story, not mine. You came with a question. I answered the question in specifics that none of your doctors could answer.
Yes.
And I'm giving you the steps. They're not quick, relatively simple. Simple doesn't always mean easy. That's life, guys. Okay. But I'm giving you the step by step. All you have to do is integrate with guidance. So if you're telling me I'm too expensive,
I like how you broke it up that way, because I think that is the part that's really hard for me when I am sitting across the table from somebody and like my heart aches, like it physically aches in my chest, guys. When you come to me and you're like, I have been trying to have this baby for X number of years, or I've been struggling with this issue and I've been to this many people and I still don't have answers. I met somebody, I taught a class for a community the other day, and one of the women in there was like, just after I got done giving my presentation, I was talking about how to work with your cycle, which Taylor and I talked about in another episode, but I gave a presentation on it.
Life, episode 1 of this season.
Yep. So I had gotten done talking to them about that, and I left the door open for questions. And the first response was, you've already answered some of the questions I've been looking for X number of years. And she ended up scheduling a call to talk to me because she said, just in that conversation, I got answers that I've been to X number of professionals and nobody's been able to answer for me. And it's like, okay, so that is the value that I want to bring. But then I present what it's going to cost to work with me, which really in the grand scheme of things is so cheap. And I know that even if I raised my prices, I would still be so cheap compared to what people are shelling out with their HSAs, which I do take.
Yeah, both of us.
I take HSA, guys.
Even FSA. Even FSA.
Yes, some FSAs will play with me, some won't.
Absolutely, I hear that.
But, you know, the thousands of dollars that they're spending on the diagnostics that they've had done, and they still don't have any answers, and I gave them that answer in that short period of time. That's the part that's really hard for me, because in my heart, I really want to help you. I really want to see you live the kind of vibrant life that I know that you're searching for. I know I can provide you with the answers that you Dr. Google at 2:00 in the morning because you can't sleep and you feel like trash. I know that I can. And that's why it makes my heart ache when I see you struggle and then you tell me I'm too expensive. And it's like, but I'm going to save you tens of thousands of dollars and years of your life and grief.
Not only that, like there's a cost with the body too. When you subject your body to all of this stuff, like please remember that there's no free lunch. It's like the GLP-1s. Oh, I'm microdosing. I don't care.
Yeah.
Same thing with Botox. Oh, I only do it once every such and such. That's fine. I'm not judging you. And you're probably not getting informed consent because you're getting injected at a wellness spa by somebody who probably is doing it because it's fun and they enjoy it, but is also making bank for what? Every liter. I've never had Botox. So I don't know how it works, right? In terms of pricing. But like, there's no free lunch. Eventually, that's going to fail. The pharmaceutical is going to fail. That's why the dose has to be increased or the medicine has to be changed or the body rejects all of it and then the body fails.
Yes.
That's what you're looking at. Like that's the stark reality of what you're looking at.
Well, and the people who are on 5+ medications, 6+ medications because they're having side effects and then they have a medication to deal with the side effects and then another medication to deal with the side effects of that medication. Like, what kind of world are we living in?
Where the commercials are literally the 3-minute pharmaceutical commercials are like people dancing as they're like, may cause diarrhea. And I'm like, have we lost our damn minds?
May have liver failure.
Yeah, could cause rashing, may experience shortness of breath. And I'm like, absolutely the fuck not. Like, no, thank you. You know, I'm not trying to toy with something that could put my biochemistry. And by the time we're getting physical symptoms anyway, Adrian and I have talked about this, we're already at the 4th stage of disease. You have other elements that you absolutely have to look at without question, you know, but just because our work isn't tangible in the sense of like, let's run a blood panel. I mean, you and I can both read it. Please bring your blood panel. Okay.
100%.
If it was done 6 months ago, I'll read it and tell you how irrelevant it is because the moment you walked out of the lab, your chemistry is different. The 3 months later that you saw the doctor, they're talking to 2 different people. By the time you're bringing your 6-month lab panel to me, unless you have like years of trends that I can look at and actually identify a pattern, okay, I saw a 90-second snapshot of who you were at the time your labs were drawn, but I can read them. Sure, bring them on over, you know?
Yeah.
Are they going to be part of my consideration? Probably not. Well, they're not you. Today.
And this is also where like people will go, yeah, I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome. I'm like, cool, you have cystic ovaries. Like, were your hormones tested? Like, how did you get that diagnosis? And more often than not, it's because they had imaging done, but they don't have some of the hair pattern. They don't have some of the other things. And I'm like,
accurate.
Okay.
And like, you're supposed to have cysts. That's normal. Like there's a criteria. How specific did your OB get with the criteria? Most of the time they don't get specific. It's like, oh, cyst PCOS.
Yes. Well, and PCOS is very different than having cystic ovaries.
Really?
And so like, sure, this is the information you're coming in with. I'm going to save it in your chart because it gives me an idea of what kinds of things people have looked at in you
also,
in the
your
past.
Psychology. Like we know where your psychology is based on what you've been exposed to in the doctor's office, because a lot of the times we sink our teeth into the stories that the doctors tell and then live out the narrative.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was told I was never going to be able to have babies. Well, see how much they know. Yeah, I got 2.
Yeah, you got 2 beauties, right? But just because our work isn't quote unquote tangible in that way, there are tools, it's very tangible. That doesn't mean it's not transformational. And arguably, I'm a little biased. I'm really not. The proof is in the pudding, darling. You know, but like I would say our work is, go listen to it, Firecrotch. Please, if you haven't listened to Firecrotch, go listen to it. It's a great episode. We're a little unhinged in that episode, but literally within 24 hours of starting to steam again, many of the symptoms that I was dealing with had resolved because my issue wasn't hormones or perimenopause. It was heat that my body, regardless of what I did, just couldn't metabolize. And steaming gave it an outlet. How is that intangible? Or like, how is it intangible when someone comes to me and they're like, I don't know what my day-to-day needs to look like. Or they're like, I'm doing this detox. And I'm like, actually, I need you to stop doing harsh detoxes. And I actually need you to do energetic clearing things every night. I need you to get in baths more often. I need you to warm your food up. Like simple, tangible things here. And they spend a month doing it and they're like, I feel so much better.
Yes. I always laugh when the very first month when somebody comes back to me when they first started working with me. And one of the pieces of advice I give them is to keep themselves warm during their bleed. Just warm. Socks on your feet. Like, make sure your skin is covered. No midriff. And they go, oh my gosh, I felt like my body wasn't working so hard. I was like, yeah, because I wasn't trying to keep you warm and do the thing. Like, it's little things, guys. But we used to be taught this stuff, like mother to daughter, grandmother to granddaughter type of information.
Communities, sisters.
Yep. And because we're not taught in that kind of environment anymore, we don't have just the basics of how we're supposed to care for our body, which is, I think, from my lens, a big part of the reason why people have as many reproductive related issues as they do, because they don't know how to operate the care and use manual. And just that alone is transformational. And then, working on the other things that people have going on. But like, this is so much education, and that's not what you're getting with your doctor. You get 15 minutes and it's not their fault. Insurance companies dictate a lot of this, but they don't give you time and teach you. And like,
don't you want to know when you walk out the door, like, okay, cool, I can go home, I can implement this. Like, this is the potential changes I'm going to see. This is what I need to look for. If I don't see it in about a month, like, these are the questions I need to ask. So, I mean,
this is why people Dr. Google at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
Because they are looking for the tangible, actionable, what do I look for? What's supposed to happen? And the thing is no Chat GPT or Dr. Google is going to give you those answers.
It continues to blow my mind as to, even with like accurate prompts, I'm like, you're wrong. Okay, let's try. You're wrong. I'm getting the 2-minute warning from my husband. So we've done a really good job. What we're actually trying to say, guys, right, is energy work shifts entire bloodlines. Okay, we're in a season of life where the medicine women and the energy healers and the wisdom keepers are waking up. And it's, please know, it's uncomfortable for us too. Like, we are dealing not only with the scrutiny of today, but we're still carrying the scrutiny of centuries past. And we're being asked to work through that. Please comprehend how painful that is for so many of us, Herbal medicine prevents what pharmaceuticals only suppress. They work with the physiology. They don't actually address the symptom. They complement the physiology, and the physiology is actually what's going to curate the symptom, right? Or cure the symptom, I should say. Like, it's the physiological response that's supported by the herbs. And astrology helps people decode patterns, their soul contracts, and reclaim their power. So the fact that we have people out there working with the unseen, that requires deeper mystery, not less mystery. And it requires respect.
Yeah.
Take that.
And that wisdom is worth every penny you'll ever pay for it, because it will pay dividends, not only for your current set of symptoms, but how you age, the vitality for the rest of your life, your ability to run around after your kids and your grandkids. Every penny that you pay to somebody like Taylor, like me, like another very accomplished natural medicine practitioner or alternative medicine practitioner who has expertise, it will continue to pay dividends for you literally for the rest of your life. It is worth every penny that practitioner is asking for.
And on that note, because I'm going to get yelled at if I soapbox, not by Adrian, but by my husband, because we have a vet appointment. Guys, until next time, stay well.